So the Star Wars film series is often used as an example to kind of convey various spiritual principles or religious principles. And while the film itself is definitely not, I think it has some Christian influences. It's definitely not necessarily a blatantly Catholic, allegorically made movie by any stretch of the means. Although there also are definitely some good themes I think we could pull from. You can see the title of this video where I'm going with this, but before I start with that, we have this classical good versus evil. We have this classical example of everybody playing a role for the greater good as we look at the body of Christ, the unity of heavenly dominion and earth dominion, that we all have this special role to play. As insignificant as we may seem, we all have this very special role that we play. And ultimately, the example of self-sacrifice throughout the films as well. So I mean, just to kind of say that. But something I noticed a lot, there are so many parallels between the lightsaber Jedi relationship and the Rosary Catholic relationship. And I made that just thinking about that the Rosary is the Catholic's lightsaber. In the same way, the Jedi yielded and were represented and used this somewhat primitive looking weapon in this kind of space advanced galaxy. Rosaries are kind of looked that same way. So I think most people who looking at this, I mean, maybe most people are familiar with the films, but I mean, most people know who the Jedi are. They heard it through pop culture, right? But right in the period of the various films, we see like the Jedi themselves, but also the relationship with the actual lightsaber is somewhat changed throughout the films. Where we in the future, or in the past, when the Jedi were respected like a group of individuals who had highly diplomatic respect and relationships throughout the galaxy, right? No one made fun of their, them carrying the lightsabers. No one made fun of them and just their practices in general. Fast forward when you get to the first three films that are kind of like set in the distant future, people kind of not only scoff at them themselves as this little small sect of devout believers and protectors and defenders of this force, likewise to how I think modern Catholics are kind of portrayed as people that are just clinging onto the past, and they're clinging onto these archaic principles and beliefs and religious practices and prayers, such as the Rosary. Of some Catholics who, again, as far as when I grew up, that's how the view in my liberalized Novus Ordo church was. We never really talked about the Rosary. We knew it was something that was kind of like more of a symbol of Catholicism, but no one really promoted it. No one talked about it. And again, I heard that was kind of commonplace back in, especially when I was growing up in the 90s as a kid. But it's very similar to, again, the carryover to the lightsaber and the Jedi, and kind of how that was portrayed in those films. Where in that film, when again the Jedis were kind of dying out, we had references in the film where you would see characters referencing this lightsaber as this arcane tool. Why would you use? You don't really see people in the Star Wars film. Well, that was one of the things, right? You were a Jedi if you had a lightsaber, you were a Jedi, right? For a number of reasons. In the past films where they were respected, that was something maybe that was a token of pride. But in the future, or when Jedi are kind of falling out, we see that as this kind of a crutch, and people are really like, why are you clinging on to this mastery of this, this lightsaber when we can have these sophisticated blasters or whatever? And that's exactly said in exactly the same way as it was now, where when the church was really under attack, that's when the rosaries were essentially unsheathed. Definitely in the prime, when the church was very healthy, it's not that people didn't pray the rosary, but when they really were unsheathed and promoted heavily was when the church was under attack. And there's many instances of that. I'll throw some quotes on down below. And that's similar to the films, right? The Jedi are this peaceful group of diplomatic individuals. They seek peace first, but yet they're trained in this combative weapon, and they're always found with this weapon. And that's how we look at many instances. The rosary is the weapon for the Catholics to drive out sin, fight against demonic forces. We see this time and time again, but also to build our own spirituality. So when you see that the Jedi are slow to use it, we also kind of showcase the idea that, again, it's an outward sign to the galaxy that people are a Jedi, so it's a distinctive kind of trait that they would have. And basically, we can see it kind of used as a teaching tool, right? Where we have the lightsaber wasn't just a weapon that's used for combative prayer, but it's also a form of spiritual practice as far as the Rosary is concerned. And that's the same thing we see with, the Jedi. What does Obi-Wan Kenobi first do with Luke Skywalker? He presents him the lightsaber, and he's training and talking about the Force while at the same time showing him how to use this lightsaber. So why are those parallels kind of two and two together? I think because they both kind of go hand in hand. The idea of the practices and disciplines you get from wielding a lightsaber in the film are somewhat carrying over to the principles that are being taught through the philosophy of the Force, right? And that's what the Rosary is really about too. I mean, when you first pick up a Rosary, it can feel kind of like, what am I doing with this? Why am I doing these repetitive prayers? I hear it's supposed to be, great once you kind of quote unquote master it, or once you really get into the groove of things. But initially, for everybody, you're just kind of like, I don't get the point of it, until it finally does click, and you are doing it consistently, and you can totally see the fruits that it yields. And it is somewhat of a mystery. I mean, I'm someone who had a complete reversion process, completely solely to the Rosary and the spiritual practice of coming back to the Rosary and just making it a consistent habit, doing every single day. And it wasn't until a few months in doing it every single day that it finally clicked, and everything in my life was that was turning around for that, in that matter, was, I think, rooted in that yielding of that spiritual weapon. So many of the quotes that we learn, right, of the Rosary, we find out are not unique to anyone's experience. Realizing, I'll list some for you guys right now. St. Louis de Montfort: never will anyone who says his Rosary every day be led astray. This is a statement I would gladly sign with my blood. Pretty bold statement. All right, many bold statements are coming up here. The Pope John the 23rd: the Rosary is a school for learning true Christian perfection. On the surface, most people are looking like, what are you talking about? It's just a few prayers, and you're saying in a certain order, and you're reflecting on things. But how is that a school for learning true Christian perfection? There's many, obviously, going right to the Padre Pio quotes. There's two big ones, right? The Rosary is the weapon for these times, the times he was in. And those, I mean, we could all probably agree, our times are 10 times worse. Saint Jose Maria Escriva: the Holy Rosary is a powerful weapon. Use it with confidence, and you'll be amazed with the results. Or the most famous, a very famous one again, a Blessed Pope Pius IX: give me an army saying the Rosary, and I will conquer the world. I'm actually recording this right now on the Feast of Our Lady of Victory, otherwise known as the Feast of Our Lady of the Rosary. Not on purpose. It just happened to be, I was trying to make this video for a while, and I thought, might as well, this is a good day to record it. I might upload this later, but the point was, I think it's kind of fitting that this is the time I'm starting to actually just record this little notion I'm having with the Rosary. Another one, St. Padre Pio: some people are so foolish that they think they can go through life without the help of the Blessed Mother. Love the Madonna and pray the Rosary, for her Rosary is the weapon against the evils of the world today. All graces given by God pass through the Blessed Mother. And this one I love, Bishop Hugh Doyle. This is the one that really resonated with me. It's one that many people have talked about. No one can live continually in sin and continue to say the Rosary. Either they will give up sin or they will give up the Rosary. That to me is one of the most solidifying statements, I think, that is out there. You can't be one without the other. I think this is one that if most people read this and they weren't saying the Rosary, obviously they're going to disagree with it. But it is something that is truly, I mean, many times in my life I've thought of, how can I want to live a nice holy life. I want to try and give up sin. I'm not saying here I am sinless, but there's no question what was the one thing that turned that all around. It was the daily Rosary. You couldn't have one with the other, as far as living a very overtly sinful life, a prideful life, yet at the same time praying the Rosary. And bringing it back to the whole lightsaber analogy, right? I think there's a reason why there's no Jedi in any Star Wars film that's not carrying a Rosary, right? That was their own weapon. They're in the Star Wars universe, right? We have all these different characters. They all have their little gimmick and their shtick, their special weapon. But the only common thread we see in the diversity of all the different, true diversity, right, of all the different, just like our Catholic diversity, right, that is naturally unique and distinct. all walks of life, all different types of people, yet we find this common thread and promotion of the Rosary, such as the same way, like I said, in the Star Wars films, where you don't find all these unique characters don't have their unique weapons like you do with other people that are not Jedi. Every single Jedi has that's their Rosary. It's like they're saying, this works. There's a reason why we're using this, and it would be, basically blaspheming the Jedi Order if you were not using a Rosary, or sorry, not using a lightsaber. And that's kind of the same parallel. I really feel that a lot of Catholics, you kind of have to learn it for yourself. And I'm not saying you're not a true Catholic if you don't do a Rosary, or you're not truly holy, or you can't live any kind of a pious life, or a holy life, I should say, without doing the Rosary. I just think you definitely are missing out on something that is a treasure to the Catholic faith, and it's something you really can't explain in words. It is truly a weapon that the more you do it, we know we are essentially fighting demonic forces. You can win battles, you can win legions of battles with this tiny piece of thread and beads or whatever. In the same way in these Star Wars films, right, where you have these Jedi taking on the galaxy with just themselves and sometimes just their lightsaber at a time. So just making that simple analogy, I thought it's worth just kind of sharing and talking about. I'm sure there's many parallels I didn't think of with regards to that analogy, but again, it's something that I looked at for a second and saw no one really talked about it. I thought it was kind of noteworthy. I thought you could think about it and gather something from it. So definitely just promoting the Rosary and our Blessed Mother, bringing us all closer to Christ and living a life as much as we can without sin. God bless you guys.